more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Scottsdale. And for everybody joining us live on our YouTube channels and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. From here, from there, from everywhere, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, with Ezra Ginsburg, Dave Minuk, here for the next couple of hours. Get you set for tonight's clash between the two top teams in Canada based on points in the standings. Of course, the Jets and the Canucks will do battle, a late night game on the left coast. That should be a doozy. As you can see, I am on vacation, but nothing will keep me away from my quality time on a Saturday morning with all of you good folks and my friends, Dave and Ezra. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning here in Arizona. How are things in Manitoba?
Well, not as good as they are in Arizona with that backdrop. Like that's like Kenny Weeb type of backdrop. Like when Kenny does the show Winnipeg Sports Talk, I'm talking about when he does it in Mexico. That's the type of backdrop that he has. So obviously we're not doing well as the retired Drew Mindell. Retirement life is treating you well, Drew, but I'm not sure if you caught the Coyotes game, but that was the only game. It was kind of odd that was the only game happening on the NHL schedule last night, boys.
I can assure you I did not catch the Coyotes game last night. I did not even cross my mind to check the schedule to see if the Coyotes were playing at home. And I was not venturing my way into the mosh pit of 4,000 people or whatever seats at that arena to witness.
How long, though, is that? Like, what's it, an hour between Phoenix and Tempe?
No, it's less than that. It's not far. It's an hour to Glendale.
Right.
So Tempe is only about 20 minutes or so.
It's an hour, but when you add traffic, it's more like, because I did that drive, it's more like 2 hours, right?
What is this? Coyotes lunch, boys? Let's go.
Okay, Dave, how are you, good friend? How are things in your world?
I'm well. It's very peculiar, and I guess we should enjoy this because in March we will be seeing each other and the folks like every day, basically. But it's very unusual how infrequent these shows have become. Obviously, this show's only once a week. But the post-game shows feel like, and we did one this last week. So it's very unusual. Of course, as I tweeted from the IC account, we will be having a Saturday IC day, of course. You start with us. Hopefully you started on legalcurve.com for the Jets and Moose news. Then you start with us. Then you've got a Moose game at 2 o'clock. I've already given away the seats for today's game, which is Chaz Lucia's bobblehead night. Continuing a tradition, by the way, of players never actually playing in their bobblehead games. Now, unfortunately for Chaz, usually that's because they've been recalled to the Jets, but he, of course, is dealing with his season-ending injury. And then you've got the Jets and Canucks, at 9 o'clock in 12. The game's not even starting for 12 hours, boys. And then, I showed Ezzy how to change the thing, so now he's making some moves. And then, of course, around 11:40,
I need to be on the bottom. It just doesn't feel right when you're on the bottom, Dave. Sorry.
You're right. Oh, there's Chris Thiessen is one of the people who will be sitting there in the seats for today's game. And then, of course, around 11:40, you'll be joining Ezzy and I for the post-game show.
Hey, don't count me out. I'm not saying it's for sure, but there's a possibility. We'll see where the night takes us. Well, there's a possibility.
There is no way that you're going to be awake. Drew, you're retired now. You're going to be in bed at like 6:30.
Honestly, I feel like some days I should be in bed at 6:30, especially on vacation and everything else.
Let me tell you, sorry, as an aside, I cannot wait till I'm like 80, if I make it that far. I can't wait till I'm 80 to 85 years old and I have dinner at like 3 o'clock. By the way,
sorry, happy birthday to Chris's son, who's celebrating his birthday today at the Moose game.
Hey, that's great. Happy birthday, Chris's son. And happy birthday to Ezzy, hopefully making it to 80 years old.
Yes.
But I understand where Ezzy was going there. The delights of going to bed early and waking up early and getting a good solid 14 hours of sleep per night.
That's the nicest thing I think you've ever said to me. I hope you make it to 80 years old.
I'm in a good mood. What can I say? Ask me tonight if I say that.
It's all that sun you're getting, Drew.
I don't know.
Drew's not be happy when you're down in Phoenix. It's beautiful.
Ezzy, I don't know. Drew looks like he's like blending in with the background. He's kind of camoed. I can't really see him there so well. So we'll see.
I know it's all part of the motif I'm going for. You should see
what time does the pool party
my
start?
beachwear. Oh, the party. Here comes my dad. My daughter's waving at me, and here comes my dad as well in the foreground. So
bring Sheldon on. Let's hear what Sheldon has to say.
You guys can come over and say hi.
Can Sheldon break down that 5-1 Hurricanes win over the Coyotes?
Yeah, nobody here can break down anything. Here's Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
And there's my dad.
Sheldon/dad.
Yes, go.
There you go.
Okay, so Sheldon, who's retired, you or Drew?
Or both?
Who's retired, me or you? Thank you, Aaron.
We're both working in our own right.
That's right. We're working in special ways. Okay, goodbye. Go get your lemonade or whatever you're getting.
Dave, I think we should bring Aaron back. Aaron's much more interesting than Drew.
Go. Later. You'll have lemonade later, sweetie. Goodbye.
Whoa,
She's upset
Drew,
that she
stealer of lemonade.
She's upset she can't have her morning lemonade just yet. But
really, morning lemonade. It's 8 a.m. Usually my kids wait till the afternoon to have their lemonade.
The problem here is that there's a like a clubhouse sort of facility.
Clubhouse, fancy.
It's very fancy. It's got lemonade and iced tea, basically 24/7. So you try keeping kids away from the idea of sugar that often. Dylan Young says he went to school with Sheldon. Okay, I'll have to ask my dad about that.
Spency says Sheldon is his golfing buddy.
It's true. It's a true story all around. Okay, let's get into some hockey talk.
There we
go. The goals are not coming for the Winnipeg Jets still, but the wins are at least this week. Going back to last Saturday, the victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then Wednesday's thrilling 1-0 victory over the San Jose Sharks. I guess it could be worse. You could be the Flames, who then lose to the Sharks 6-3 on the second half of a back-to-back. Exactly right. So in that sense, it's better than the alternative. But how concerned are you guys that the goals are still not coming for this Jets team, because it's not realistic to be able to win games 2-1 and 1-0 consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go first here. I mean, I'm concerned because this is something that's been going on for over a month now, right? Like, what is it, 15 goals in the last 11 games, going back to that 2-1 win. If you remember, weren't the Jets down 1-0 in that game, if I remember correctly? It wasn't a very convincing win over the Blackhawks. I remember that. But yeah, like this isn't something that has just been going on for 3 games post All-Star break or something like that, even though they were shut out by the Pittsburgh Penguins coming out of the break, right? So I think you have to be concerned mainly because it's not just 1 or 2 players that are struggling to score goals, right? Like, it's up and down the lineup. Like we've talked about it. Since Kyle Connor has returned to the lineup, I think it's been 8 games now, Dave, 9 games, and he's only got 2 goals. And one of those is into an empty net, right? So, I mean, you're talking about the big guns, Cole Perfetti. I mean, it's been a while since he scored a goal, right? Like, Alex Iafallo has been a really long time. Gabe Vilardi's not putting the puck in the net right now, right? Like, obviously, Nino Niederreiter recently scored, and he broke his 15-game goalless drought, but it's up and down the lineup, and it's the big guns, right? Like, Nikolai Ehlers has scored recently, but, he's not exactly, scoring 2 goals every game, right? So that's what I think I'm the most concerned about. And, I think when you see the line rushes from Vancouver, Dave, you're thinking to yourself, like, what is it going to take for Rick Bowness to put Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, and Gabe Vilardi on the top line together? Because when that line was together, they were dominant. They were scoring like a couple goals every game, it seemed like, or more than, right? So I think what it is you're not just concerned about 1 player, 2 players, 3 players, or 1 line. You're concerned about every line right now. And that's not something that the Jets have experienced, through the first 30 games of the season. It's been the last, 20 or so games that the offense has really dried up. So I'm not saying that I think, that the Jets are going to average 1 goal a game for the rest of the season. I think that would be ridiculous, guys. But, you've got a very interesting stretch coming up here where you've got 3 games in 4 days, starting off against Vancouver. And as Drew mentioned, I don't think a lot of people at the beginning of the season would have, thought that the Jets and the Canucks would be, near the top of the Western Conference standings. It's only Dallas that's in between the Jets and the Canucks at this point, right? So this is a possible Western Conference final preview. Obviously, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but these are 2 really good teams. So I think you have to be concerned. And there's only 3 weeks left, I think, exactly before the trade deadline. And you wonder if this continues another 3, 4, 5 games. You wonder, if Chevy's going to have to pull the trigger on another move. It's only been 4 games with Sean Monahan, guys, so we're not going to get too excited here. And you can't put this all on Sean Monahan, who obviously I don't even think he has a point yet. But I mean, you need to start scoring some more goals. They've averaged 1 goal a game for the last 11 games, or 1.4 goals a game. That's just not going to cut it.
Look, the recipe for the Jets' success so far this year has undoubtedly been defense first, and I don't think anyone's advocating away from defense first, because we've seen too many Jets teams where defense is optional. We know it's not long-term success, Dave. But at a point in time, I think the coaching staff needs to come to the realization that it's also equally not sustainable to win games only by a 1-0 margin or only by a 2-1 margin. And you have to let the horses run a little bit more. And right now, the horses just seem like the reins are being pulled on them so tight that they're not generating anything offensively. Now, I know it shouldn't have been 1-0 on Wednesday against the Sharks. They dominated, outshooting a team 40-18. But what if Mark Scheifele doesn't make that mini stick save? Well, all of a sudden you're tied 1-1, against the team that's at the bottom of the NHL standings. You need to find a way to generate a little bit more, and moving Nikolai Ehlers from a prominent role, to me, is not that solution.
Yeah, and we saw, courtesy of Mike McIntyre yesterday at practice, that he switched back from Ehlers up on the top line to Ehlers on the second line, and Rick Bowness's justification for that was simply that because they don't have last changed, and the line gave up some opportunities. Now, it's funny. There's two ways of looking at this. We know that Velarde, Ehlers, and Scheifele worked. We know that they scored. We know that the team won a lot with those three as a trio. And I remember when they broke it up originally, and we were like, why would you break up something that's successful? And I said at the time, well, I can understand it, because you don't want to become too reliant on one thing. Because when you lose, Josh Morrissey, or you lose Mark Scheifele in the playoffs, ultimately you need to be able to play without those players. So you can't become reliant on one line playing together for 82 games, because if something happens in game 83, i.e. the first game of the playoffs, and something happens to that line, you can't become like, oh, well, we don't have any other line combos that work. So I get that. I understood where Rick Bowness was coming from. But I also understand the fact that you're not winning games convincingly. And look, we always hear it. It's the same answer. It's the same cliche. The games change after the All-Star break. The games become tighter. Well, don't tell the Dallas Stars that, because they won the other day, 9-3? Yeah. So, I mean, the fact is teams are still scoring. It's just the Jets that aren't. So you can come up with these excuses. Oh, well, we're getting lots of opportunities. We like it. Look, they 24-7 were the high danger chances in the last game. And of course, we know the Jets metric that's the publicly available. That's what the Jets metric might be slightly different. But regardless, we know that there was a significant disparity between those two teams. And so you credit the netminder, of course, for playing well. But ultimately, again, we've talked about this. This is a Jets team that needs to have some sort of success scoring, because once the dam breaks, it's like this tightness. Everybody is tight right now. And if, we saw the relief on Nino Niederreiter's face captured by our amazing photographer, Colby Spence, when he broke, as he said, his 15-game goalless streak. Well, that's the whole point, that these guys are tight. And I just think that you reunify Velarde, Scheifele, and Ehlers. I don't know why Scheifele and Kyle Connor now have become Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. And it's this sacrosanct pairing that can never be broken up. And look, at the end of the day, if you're Rick Bowness, especially when you don't have final change, okay. So, I mean, is Kyle Connor on the quote second line a huge again, the guy missed, as he said, 5 weeks of hockey. Ultimately probably came back. I'm not saying he came back early, because he obviously was ready to go, but he wasn't at 100%, right? He had to get used to the brace, had to do this. So I'm just saying that, giving Kyle Connor a slight downgrade to the second line, I just think ultimately is not, especially when you need to start scoring. So go back to Ehlers, Velarde, and Scheifele. And again, Monahan, Connor, and Perfetti isn't a bad second line, right? You can score with that trio.
Drew, I just want to get in here before you jump in.
Go ahead.
And Ehlers actually hasn't scored in 7 games. So Ehlers hasn't scored in 7 games. Cole Perfetti hasn't scored a goal in 11 games. Mark Scheifele has 1 goal in 6 games. Kyle Connor has, I mentioned previously, 2 goals in 9 games since returning. 1 is an empty netter.
Right.
So essentially he has 1 goal that really matters here. even though you guys know what I mean.
Yes.
Gabe Vilardi has gone 6 games without a goal. So again, this is your top 6. Like, we're not talking about Alex Iafallo right now. We're talking about Gabe Vilardi is struggling offensively. Nick Ehlers hasn't scored in 7 games. Cole Perfetti hasn't scored in 11 games. And again, I'm not saying that these are bad players by any stretch of the imagination. These are all actually excellent players. Cole Perfetti is having a great second full season in the NHL. And obviously, you know, the wrist injury might be factoring in, Dave, right? It was Rick Bowness that told us about a month ago, maybe not exactly a month ago, but something like that, 6 weeks ago, whatever, that Perfetti was dealing with a wrist injury when he was providing his injury updates for all of his players. So again, the top 6 as a whole is struggling to score goals. And you have to go, in my opinion, back to what works. Nikolai Ehlers is your best offensive driving player. He drives offense. We know that with his speed, his zone entries, his ability to make plays. He's got a good shot off the rush. I think you have to go back to Ehlers, Scheifele, Vilardi, and Rick Bowness, for whatever reason, doesn't want to go back to that. And it's really mind-boggling at this point, Drew.
Well, you hear that, you know, Mark Scheifele, you know, doesn't want to play with Nikolai Ehlers because he's not a predictable player to play with, and that's been the knock on Ehlers, you know, a lot, is that he's not the easiest guy to play with because there's so much freestyle.
But he's the Jets' most talented player. Like,
I know
the numbers back that up. He's the Jets' best offensive player.
Right. So my comment in return to that would be, yes, and he might not be, you know, simple to play with, but at the same time, maybe everybody needs to adapt a little bit more and be a little bit more flexible with it, because
Drew, think about it from well, just quickly add in, think about the flip side. That means that the defenses are also a little bit confused by him, and it's a little bit more confusing for the defenses, which makes your job potentially easier because they're trying to figure out how to defend against the guy who's unpredictable, and that gives you some openings.
Right. Look, I just think they're going back to immediately removing Nikolai Ehlers from the equation, which is what Rick Bowness's MO has been oftentimes in close games in the third period, to me is no solution at all. That's just you know, handcuffing your team and your team's chances for success. You need to find a way to incorporate his skill set, as dynamic and unpredictable as it might be, into a regular rotation, especially in that third period where the defense, to your point, Dave, might be a little bit gassed, might be a little bit more tired, and thus might not be as on point in defending against a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, who is so shifty and so talented and so dynamic. More Nikolai Ehlers is always the solution rather than less Nikolai Ehlers, in my humble opinion.
And you have to have, sorry, Dave, just want to say, you have to have a line that you can depend on right now. Like, when you need a goal, that's the line you put out there. Right. And it's not Lowry, Appleton, and Niederreiter. All due respect to those guys, that's your shutdown line.
Yeah.
So, right, like if you're going to go to the Scheifele line, I mean, that line better be clicking, right? And right now it's not clicking. And when you had Ehlers with Scheifele and Vilardi, it was clicking. So again, Rick Bowness has more combined games of NHL experience than any other coach in history, right?
Yeah.
He knows way more than I do. So obviously he's not listening to us, or he's not listening to anybody else in the media. But it just, and again, I think you go to Ehlers, Scheifele, and Vilardi, and you stick with it for a few games. Maybe they don't score, you know, against Vancouver, even though if they don't, they're if the Scheifele line doesn't score against Vancouver, most likely they're not winning, because Vancouver is a good offensive team. At this point, it just seems like it's kind of musical chairs from game to game, right, Dave?
Well, it's funny, there was one of the comments because the lady behind Drew was like shuffling the chairs. And so I thought that was, and they said it was appropriate given what we're talking about right now. And look, I understand. I mean, you've got a new player in Sean Monahan. This was expected that it was going to take some games for him to kind of get used to the system, figure things out, and get acclimatized. And, you know, we talked with Cole Perfetti about that a couple of days ago, and we knew that this is going to be a process. But I mean, again, and you've got a lot of points in the standings bank, so you're okay in that regard. But, you know, like I said, especially against the next little stretch, right? When you play teams like Chicago, and then who do they play after? I know they've got Minnesota, and Minnesota's hard charging right now. Minnesota, and Declan Chisholm, we should mention, is making his Minnesota Wild debut tonight Thought actually maybe he'd be making it against the Jets on Tuesday, but he's making his debut. The 2018 fifth rounder of Winnipeg will be making his Minnesota Wild debut this evening. So that's about time, because it was interesting. He's been claimed it's already been 2 weeks since he was claimed by the Wild, but he'll be getting some NHL action for the first time since I think December 5th. But look, I mean, there's teams that are the Canucks. Look at the Canucks. The Canucks have played 4 more games than Winnipeg. I think they played 55. Winnipeg's played 51. The Canucks have scored 51 more goals than the Jets. Now, they've also given up about 20 more than Winnipeg has. But, I mean, that's a significant number. Now, to the point that he's making, they score a lot. Now, you've got Connor Hellebuck in net. Rick Bowness confirmed that yesterday. So we know that, you've got your number one goaltender who's going to be amped up to play this game. But, again, it's just, how long do you keep these things? Like, I understand the problem for Rick Bowness is that he said, well, we want to give this a few days. We want to give this some runway, to use a Jet analogy. So you want to give this some runway to see what you've got. But then he's the one who made the switches, right? He's the one who dropped Velarde. He's the one who made the moves. So, I mean, you don't have that sort of, even Gabe Velarde, when we talked to him at the beginning of this week, said, he was asked about the line with Monahan and Perfetti. And he said, well, we only played like a game and a half together. There hasn't been a lot of, opportunity really to develop that sort of chemistry. So, I mean, Rick Bowness himself has really sort of tinkered with the formula almost prematurely, if you will. And I understand, because he's trying to get goal scoring, but you can't have both ways. You can't want to let them develop chemistry, but also want goal scoring, because what's giving you goal scoring. I think, boys, and I think the chat would probably agree, what this ultimately comes back to is when Kyle Connor was injured and you went 12-2-2 in the 16 games he missed over 5 weeks, and you were scoring. And it wasn't just the one line scoring, wasn't the second line scoring. It was all 4 lines were contributing. So where does that go? Why does it just disappear? It's like water at the bottom of a pond that just is gone. And now suddenly it's a dry pond.
Right.
So
and you can't blame the player break, and you can't blame the fact that Sean Monahan is new to the system and everything like that, because Monahan's actually been pretty good, I would say, for a guy that hasn't put up any points, right, Dave? Like, he's winning his faceoffs. He's been out there on the power play, even though it seems like the Jets don't really get many power plays these days, right? But, like, it's not a chemistry thing. It's a finishing thing, because we talked about it. I mean, the shot attempts, what were they, 85 or something like that against the Sharks?
Something like that.
So, I mean, you could say that, the Jets have to simplify their game a little bit, but it just doesn't seem like there's chemistry on any of the lines right now. And it goes back to, right, when the fourth line had Dominic Toninato, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, and Morgan Barron, where we were calling it the mad line or the damn line. I mean, that line was chipping in offensively, right? Like, and obviously Barron just scored his 9th goal of the season, career high. Dave M pointed that out on Twitter. But right now it's a problem. And again, I don't think it's as big of a problem for me now as if we're talking about this in another week after they play the Canucks and they play the Flames and they play the Wild, and then don't they have Arizona a week from now at home? But the thing is, like, that Coyotes team just got spanked 5-1 at home in Drew's home state of Arizona there. But I mean, Carolina is a great team, and Arizona is not an easy out. Arizona, we know they have good goaltending, but the Jets you should beat them. But I'm just saying, like, I will be more, if we're talking about this a week from now and the Jets are still struggling to score goals against teams like the Flames and the Wild, then I'm going to be even more concerned. But this is a very important stretch for the Jets here, these next 3 games.
They need to find a way, and maybe it's a function of the long layoffs between games, because that's it is an unusual part of the schedule where you can't find any of the chemistry, or you maybe find chemistry for a period or 2, and then you have 3 days off before playing another game.
Just quickly, sorry to interject, but Velarde did say when he was asked about the benefit, because I think Kelly Moore had asked him, is there a benefit to having this kind of time off of games so you guys can develop the chemistry in practice? And Velarde kind of looked at him and said, well, you can look at it that way, but I don't. And he wasn't being like confrontational. He was being matter of fact, but he basically said, I would rather be playing games and getting that in-game experience with these guys than practice. So to the point you're making,
right?
I think he would expect that game let's put it this way. He wants the March schedule in February.
Well, so maybe now that you have 3 and 4 nights starting tonight in Vancouver against, the big test against Vancouver, because, whatever people think about the Canucks, whether they're going to regress to the mean because their PDO is too high. I mean, regardless, Vancouver is clearly a very good hockey team. Even if that PDO comes down, when it comes down and they begin to, not be at this level of success, there's no denying that the Canucks are a damn good hockey team. But you got 3 and 4 nights, so maybe that is what allows you to sort of generate that more consistency and generate that more connectivity that has been missing from this team for so long. So it's always the rest versus rust debate that we hear so often. Remember, when the Jets swept the Oilers in the COVID playoffs that one year, and everyone was flying high, and then they came back and they just looked like a different team against the Canadians, and then they got swept by the Canadians in the second round. Rest versus rust. Well, the rest period is really sort of coming to an end, and maybe that's good for the Jets because that'll get rid of some of the rust that they're experiencing, and maybe the offense will begin to generate as a result. Regardless of if it does or doesn't, later tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show will cover it all. That's going to be, hang on, let me do some math. So that'll be about 11:30, 11:45 Central Time, an hour earlier here in Arizona, where I am residing for this week's edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Living that retirement life with Sheldon. I love it.
I am living that retirement life. I'll be back on Tuesday. Don't worry, I'll be back for that. When we come back, our good friend from Post Media and the Winnipeg Sun, Ted Wyman, joins us on the show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed. Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly, see lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Bottom of hour number 1, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on this Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and we're thrilled to welcome back to the program our good friend, the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun, Ted Wyman, joins us on the phone. Not the phone, you know what I meant, the computer, as we are live here on our YouTube channel. Teddy, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Good morning, fellas. Things are pretty good. 3 weeks in Mexico does wonders for the mind and body. And I'm just back in Winnipeg for a few days now, getting caught up. Obviously, lots and lots of sports news to talk about. Not just hockey, I'll tell you, man. Curling's pretty interesting right
Scotties.
now.
Let's get into it. Drag the Scotties, Ted.
Yeah, what's going on with Carrie Einerson and her lead on the team? I mean, that is a stunner to come out right, hours before the opening draw yesterday.
Yeah, I can't give you the scoop. I don't know if anybody can. I mean, I have talked to everyone up and down, like all the contacts I have in the sport, which is quite a lot, and everybody's just perplexed by it. So can't tell you for sure what's going on there, but it sure was a bombshell, and it's kind of news that's hanging over the whole event right now. It'll be interesting to see if anybody decides to get out in front of it instead of having this big ambiguous situation.
Because and not to get not to become the hog line violation curling show, but like if it was a residency issue, this would have been resolved a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's that.
Okay, there you go. Anyways, Ted will keep you covered on everything going on at the Scotties, which got underway yesterday. And of course, Jen Jones announcing her retirement after just the most epic career imaginable for any athlete in any sport. And wouldn't it be great if she could somehow wrap it up, getting her 7th Scotties title this week. Anyways, that's a separate issue altogether. We brought you on, Teddy, to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. We spent the first 30 minutes of the show sort of talking about the offense and the lack thereof. It's been a continuing concern from your perspective. I'm sure you kept track of things still in sunny Mexico. Why all of a sudden a team that was pretty adept at scoring can no longer do so from your mindset?
Well, I only have theories on that one, to be honest. And I was lucky enough. I was in a town called Bucerias for a big part of my time in Mexico. And man, they show every hockey game. Like there's like, you go into a bar there, it's like Winnipeg. There's so many Jets fans. I actually watched the Jets-Leafs game the one night, and half the room was Leaf fans and half the room was Jets fans. It was quite.
You must have gone to Jack's, right?
I've been to Jack's, but this was at a place called the Goalie that time. So
just as a quick aside, my wife Naomi, she always likes to do Proud Mary when there's a live band, and the band there let her come up and do Proud Mary in Bucerias. We got away from our kids because we were staying in Nuevo. But Bucerias is beautiful. But that Jack's spot is beautiful.
If there's no video that you're willing to share, then that didn't happen.
I do have video. I actually do have video of
Then
Naomi.
Come on, upload it to the site so we can see that.
Anyway, I was lucky enough to see the games. I didn't see anybody from Winnipeg singing Proud Mary, so I missed out on that part. But the takeaway is that it felt to me a little bit like last season, and I couldn't help but wonder if when this team plays the defensive style that it does, it's just so locked in on it, and Rick Bowness got them to play that style right from the start of the season. And it creates this fantastic early season success, right? Because they're just clamping down, they're playing great, they're generating offense from defense, all those kinds of things. But then around the midway part of the season, it starts to change. And you wonder if it's other teams making adjustments, figuring out what this team's game plan is overall. And a team that has become so defense first maybe now finds a little bit of trouble generating the offense that it did. And, it doesn't take a genius to see it. They're just not scoring very many goals. It's kind of amazing, really. Just since I've been back, they've actually not even, I was still in Mexico when they played Pittsburgh. They don't play that many games these days right now. And just 3 goals in the last 2 games, and they still win both games. It's going to be tough to find success all season long with that formula. And I mean, you're talking about Vancouver Canucks. That's not a team that's going to, be easy to beat if you can only score 1 or 2 goals. So it has to change. You need a little bit more offense from Sean Monahan. You need more offense from the defense, which is something that was such a big part of why this team was successful early on this season and early on last season. Obviously, the top line guys have to get going. I mean, I will say this. I agree with my colleague Scott Billick on the column that he wrote after the last game, and that was that at least, even though they were playing one of the worst teams in the league, at least they did generate a ton of shot attempts. They did create the kind of possession that you would expect to be able to score goals. And it was a sign that things are starting to break out. They only scored once, though. And I mean, it doesn't matter how many shot attempts you get. If you're not putting the puck in the net, it's not going to lead to success. But it certainly was an encouraging development, I thought, in terms of the long-term prognosis for this team.
Ted, you mentioned that you were in Mexico for 3 weeks, and I think it's been 3 weeks since the Jets scored a power play goal. That was my big joke that I had queued up for you. But I mean, I'm not going to ask you what's wrong with the power play, because what I mentioned last week to the guys was, I mean, this is something that goes back to the kind of the 2017, 2019 Jets, when they had Buff and Laine and Trouba and all these big shots on the power play. Like, is this not getting to a point where if the Jets continue to struggle on the power play over the next 3 weeks, which coincides with the March 9th trade deadline, if you're Chevy, are you not trying to bring in like a power play specialist? Like Marty Biron, TSN, mentioned Vladimir Tarasenko. He's obviously a guy who's scored a lot of power play goals. Like it's almost mind-boggling at this point how terrible the Jets power play is.
But you know who else has scored a lot of power play goals? Kyle Connor. And he's just not scoring them, right? And Mark Scheifele scored a lot of power play goals, and he's not scoring them. I'm not sure that Vladimir Tarasenko is going to give you that magic bullet to make your power play good. It's about the process. It's about the system. It's about making, it's control of the puck. It's good zone entries. It's all those little things. It's winning faceoffs at the right time when you're in the offensive zone. They're not doing that very well lately. I mean, there's a lot of contributing factors to why they're not having success on the power play. And I mean, it's just an ongoing problem. It might be a coaching issue. I mean, it hasn't been very good all season. You got to work through that, and you've got to find some ways to get pucks into the net. And in that situation, it's easy enough for me to say, but I just, and I'll tell you what else, like the Boston Bruins didn't have a great power play last season. They had one of the best seasons in the history of the NHL. It's not always imperative that you have the best power play to be successful, but it sure would help. And especially when you're struggling to score like the Jets are. What is it, 10 goals in 13 games or something crazy like that? Like, it's a really low number. You've got to take advantage of those chances when you get them. So I do think that, I think they've got to do something, switch it up, move different guys around, put guys in different positions, change the trigger man if you have to. Whatever you need to do, you got to figure out a way to get a goal or two on the power play if you're going to, try to become a more offensive team.
Ted Wyman is our guest Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg later tonight after the Jets and the Canucks, the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 11:45 p.m. Central Time back here on our YouTube channel.
Long day for you guys.
Long day. And a Moose game in between, Teddy. So it'll be a real long one. But
and, and I just have to swim all day and then go into the hot tub and back and forth and back and forth. It's very difficult.
Tough life for Drew.
I'm in Scottsdale, the city that Ken Wee built.
It's freedom, Ted. It's freedom 42 for Drew.
Nice.
Ted, the big question.
Really having success. I'm happy to hear that. Drew got all the money. It's like he's like the
he's
of the group.
Yeah, he absconded with everything.
We're stuck in River Heights and Drew's in Scottsdale.
Yeah. Ted, the big question mark right now with, we talk about 3 weeks to the trade deadline is, what do the Jets need to acquire? Do they need, the focus obviously was a right shot defenseman, someone big, strong, let's call him a Tanev type, a Chris Tanev type. That was kind of the model that most folks were cued in on. My question to you is kind of a two-parter, but number one, do you still feel like that's the need for this Jets club, or do you think they need a winger to kind of augment some of the scoring woes that they're in right now? And what do you take from this Ville Heinola talk that we've been hearing lately? Yesterday, Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast was discussing the Western Conference arms race And he said, well, the Jets really want to get Heinola in there. They're considering him an internal ad. 3 days ago, Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Thanks for that breaking news from Elliot, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But I was going to say, really, all it did was reiterate the point Kevin Cheveldayoff made when he was on the NHL wraparound podcast with former Rangers GM Neil Smith, and he essentially was asked about it. He said, well, he gave a very Chevy answer. He said, well, we could nibble, we could do big, we could do nothing, we could do in the middle. And he goes, and then he talked about Heinola, and he essentially said, well, we view him as an internal ad. So do you think? And now the question becomes, do you think that's the Jets trying to get out and say, well, listen, we don't really need to make a trade for a defenseman, so he's trying to lower the cost? Or do you think that's actually their way of thinking that, hey, Heinola is someone they're planning, once the roster size limits are eliminated, someone they're planning on bringing in?
To your original question, it's a little from column A and column B, because you could use an ad either spot, really. I mean, you could, if you really believe you have to have a right shot defenseman there. I mean, that's obviously Nate Schmidt's been on that third pairing on the right side. I thought Logan Stanley played pretty well in the absence of Brendan Dillon. At least the last game he sure did. And they're getting Dillon back now. I've never had a huge issue with this defense. I mean, they're a very good defensive hockey team. They're playing well. The third pairing has been successful with, and Dylan Sandberg's really developed into a very good player. I mean, I don't see a huge issue there, and I don't know what your ad's going to be that's going to make you that much better on the defensive side. I mean, you could probably upgrade on Nate Schmidt a bit, and then you've got a, $5 million guy sitting on your bench, but I guess you do what you got to do, right, to try to win. And then as it looks up front, this is a top six that should be able to score. So, and they've got a pretty good balance throughout the lineup, with Morgan Barron. I think he's got 9 goals playing on the fourth line. That's not bad. In the past, a lot of Jets fourth liners were 1 or 2 goals. Right? So that's a big difference. I just, they're in a slump when it comes to scoring goals. They've got to find a way to break out of that. And that's really the thing that's going to make the difference. I don't know how much the ad is going to help in this situation. And then the Ville Heinola situation, I mean, I wouldn't rule out even trading him if it were me, just because they haven't been able to bring him along and get him into the lineup here. And if he was really worth something that got you something really good that could make you, kind of an over-the-top kind of playoff team, it would be worth considering. I personally think, but it doesn't really sound like that. I read that story on your site, Dave, about what he said. And, I was interested in it because the fact that he started talking about own ad, internal ad, made you think, well, maybe they do want to make that happen. But I don't even really know in my mind where he fits in that situation either, when you've already got this group of 6 defensemen that you've got. So, and Stanley sort of hanging around on the edge. So it's just a matter of identifying what really is going to make a difference for this team. I don't think it needs to be better defensively. It's been a very good defensive hockey team, and it's got a great goaltender, and they've got, a chance to be successful based on those properties. Certainly you get into the playoffs, you want to be a great defensive team, and you want to have a great goaltender. And maybe you're going to win every game 2-1, and it's going to be fine.
And I just want to say one thing too.
Some goals somehow in down the stretch run here, to make sure that you hold on to a decent playoff spot. They've got a great grip on it right now. When you look at the standings, it would be a heck of a drop to fall out or even close to the playoff line. But, you got to make sure you stay where you are.
And I agree with you, Ted. Like, it's really hard to predict what Chevy's going to do because he already made a big move, right? And I know there's a certain, subsection of Jets fans that think, this team is good enough if you bring in, let's say, a Pavel Buchnevich or a Chris Tanev. But, I'm kind of leaning more towards maybe picking up a guy like a Sean Walker, right? Like a guy who, won't, like, I don't know what Sean Walker would cost, a 2nd-round pick, and maybe maybe Logan Stanley in a 2nd round. Like, I have no idea, but I know a lot of Jets fans want Chris Tanev. The only thing is we hear the Canucks want Tanev because obviously Tanev used to play for the Canucks, and, the Leafs. Like, Tanev just to me is there. It's not a very good crop of trade deadline targets, by the way. Like, it's not like we're talking about like you said, Vladimir Tarasenko, you weren't as high on as other people. Like, I agree. Like, if your big guns like Kyle Connor, Cole Perfetti, and Nick Ehlers aren't scoring, that's a bigger problem. You got to figure that out first and get the offense back to where it was, back in, November and December.
Well, I honestly think, Ezzy, if you can get Chris Tanev, absolutely you want to get Chris Tanev. I mean, who wouldn't want that guy? He's a shot blocker extraordinaire. He can score, he can contribute offensively. He's a warrior. You would love to have a guy like that for the playoffs. So if you can do it, then yeah, I think you want to be in the mix on something like that. And it does sort of upset the apple cart a little bit on defense. They'd have to, move some players around and figure out how that's going to work. But if you're all in and you've already made your trade for Monahan, which seems like you kind of are, then you're going to be more all in. And I think they made their ad up front. So, I talked about not going either way earlier. I think if you are going to make an ad, it probably should be on defense. And if you're going to get a player that's going to make you that much better, a guy like Tanev, I'm not sure they're going to get a guy like that. That's the problem. You said the crop.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to clarify. I would love for the Jets to get Tanev. I just think there might be 6 teams that are after him right now. It might be 8 teams. I have no idea. I don't want to get people's hopes up too high, Ted.
Right. But I mean, that would be a great ad. There's just no doubt about it. But we talk about this every year, guys, and like 80 to 90% of the guys that get brought up are unrealistic at times, right? Like it's just, there's 16 other teams in the hunt for them. So you've got a 1 in 16 chance of getting them.
Remember when Jets fans wanted Stamkos, Ted?
Mark Stone, right? Like, obviously people hoped that there would be a chance that he'd want to come here because he was from Winnipeg, but you can't compete with Vegas on that situation. They weren't able to compete with Vegas and they didn't get him. And look what he's done for Vegas. I mean, what a difference maker he could have been over the years for this team, but it's not easy in Winnipeg. So, and they've already spent a very big asset to get Sean Monahan. So how many more of those big assets are you willing to give away to get a pretty top playoff performer like Chris Tanev?
Well, we're talking about the offensive doldrums, Ted, and there's no question that they're prevalent for the Winnipeg Jets. Yet one of the biggest offensive drivers on this team, Nikolai Ehlers, is always the guy who seems to be getting his minutes reduced rather than expanded upon. Is that just because of his creativity? Coaches can't handle that because it's not just been Rick Bowness, it's been over Paul Maurice before him. It's just because he doesn't fit squarely in a box of predictability. It seems like he's the one who's always getting his reins pulled hardest rather than some of the other play, and as a result the team might be losing out on some of that offensive creativity that he brings to a table, that he brings to the table for a team that's so desperate for some of that offensive creativity.
Well, much to the chagrin of Jets Nation, right, guys? I mean, nothing gets X going like a Nikolai Ehlers demotion. And sometimes it seems weird. It's like it just doesn't line up with what we in the press box see, or even what we see in the analytics chart, or any of those things. And then all of a sudden he's the one that's being singled out and demoted. But there's also the other side of it. And that's that if the coach thinks Alex Iafallo might make a difference in getting that line going, then he makes a move like that. And you can't really deny if he thinks that means something that's going to change the way Scheifele's playing or the way Connor's playing or whatever, then maybe you just have to do it. And somehow that's what it ends up being for Nikolai Ehlers, is that he ends up playing in a more reduced role. I think there's nobody better on this team that I can ever remember at zone entries. I mean, the guy is fantastic at it. He backs the defense in basically and gets the puck in every time. Nobody else has that ability. And so you'd think that would make all the difference in terms of being on a top line and giving that opportunity for creativity. And then again, you see these other situations, and I just I'm not there in the head of Rick Bowness and his coaching staff to know what they see that takes him out of that mix, and he doesn't share those things with us. So it's a bit perplexing at times. There's no doubt about it. And I guess it sometimes shows you that what we think we know isn't always everything.
That's hard to believe.
And that leads next nicely, Ted, into my next question, because we're about 20 minutes into the interview here. So I think you're ready for the hard-hitting question here. Rutger McGroarty, 2022 14th overall pick. He's got, last time I checked, he had 38 points in 24 games. He either scored 2 goals or 3 goals last night for the University of Michigan. Dave's the Michigan guy, so if Dave gives me the thumbs up, I think Rutger had 2 goals last night for the University of Michigan. And I'm not just asking you this question, Teddy, because a lot of people in the chat are talking about Rutger, but I mean, obviously the big speculation is, is Rutger going to sign his pro contract, which we don't know. I mean, there's a good chance. We should mention he's played 2 seasons now with the University of Michigan. And the second part of that question is, Ted, if he does sign his entry-level contract, what do you think the chances are that the Jets would use him regularly in the lineup? Because there's always the chance they give him a game towards the end of the regular season. But I guess, what are your kind of thoughts on Rutger McGroarty turning pro and then maybe having an impact with the Jets this season?
First of all, if Dave's the Michigan guy, does that mean you can do the Michigan? No, I guess not. Okay. Well,
I cannot, Ted.
And I'm not going to lie, Ezzy, I haven't thought about this that much, so it's definitely being sprung upon me, for kind of a instant reaction. But I did read, I have been following what Rutger McGroarty's been doing, and I mean, it's pretty incredible, right? Like, I mean, and we all know what he's been like when he's been here for development camps and whatnot, and his personality is just off the charts. He's going to be one of the most popular Jets of all time, assuming that they get him signed and get him here. And I think he seems like the kind of player who's mature enough, having played at the college level where he's at, plus at the World Junior and having such success there, who could make a difference for this team. I mean, and I'm just talking about on paper. I don't know the backroom kind of situation of when you want to sign a guy to a contract, when it's going to burn any of his time. I think if they brought him in late in the season, it wouldn't burn time, right? Like if you get him into a game or whatever. But it seems like the kind of situation where you could do that. You at least have the option of considering it. And have we seen that? We have seen that before, right? We have seen players sign late in the season with teams and go on and be impact players in the playoffs. And maybe, just maybe, that's something that you can do. But it's very hard to speculate when you don't know what the scouting staff,
right,
and the personnel people have planned for him, right? They have something laid out that they want to lead to his success as a pro player.
And it seems likely, Ted, by the way, that he is going to sign his pro contract, but that's just based on, I think, more so that it appears that he's NHL ready, right? Like I don't think anybody knows who covers the Jets really if it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to sign. There always is the chance that he plays a third year with the University of Michigan. I just think most people are leaning towards him signing because he appears to be NHL ready, right?
I think logically, based on past precedent, you would expect that he'd sign when the Michigan season is over. He would burn a year of that entry-level contract by playing one game or a couple games down the stretch that are relatively likely to be relatively meaningless, assuming the Jets have locked up.
Similar to what Andrew Kopp did, right?
Similar to what Andrew Kopp did, exactly. You get him out, you get him into the organization, but to expect him to come in and, there's no obvious role for him to play, to slot into the top 12 for the Jets come playoff team. That would be really, I would say, unexpected, barring injury, of course. But the Jets seem pretty set right now with their top 12, never mind any other additions they might make come trade deadline time, that he's going to bump one of those guys out of the lineup. But you come in, you bring him into the organization, you let him burn a year of the entry-level contract, you get him around the guys and within the dressing room as maybe a black ace for the playoffs or something like that. And I think it's a lot more. That's
what I think is more likely. I don't see Rutgers stepping right in to the first round of the playoffs and playing in the Jets' top 6, even though I think his ceiling as an NHLer is very high, maybe like a 70 to 80 point guy, right? Like we all kind of view him as kind of like in the mold
20 years old
of the Kachuk brothers.
Develop.
Yeah, he doesn't turn 20 actually for another month. But the point is, and Dave mentioned Andrew Kopp. Kopp actually played 3 years for the University of Michigan. And there's a difference there, right? Like you're talking about Rutger McGroarty, I think is more of a highly regarded prospect. We would agree, Ted, but I think it's more likely to what. Yeah. So more, I think, Drew, you nailed it. I think it's more likely that McGroarty plays maybe a game or two and then he watches and he's just around the team. I just think it's also like, you got to factor this in, Ted. It's a lot of pressure to put in for a guy, right? To put him right into the lineup. Let's say, the Jets are playing the Avalanche, for example, in the first round. It's a lot of pressure to put on a guy at 20 years old.
I'm just saying I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't.
I wouldn't rule it out either. I'm just leaning towards him playing a game or two and not playing in the playoffs, but I could be wrong.
Why are you burning a year of his contract to do that?
But that's what you get, because that's the enticement to get him to sign. You get,
I guess
that's the trade-off.
You get a chance to be a free agent sooner.
Well, no, I mean, he doesn't gain. So he doesn't actually gain a year towards free agency. He just gains the year towards the contract, a new contract. So he doesn't. It doesn't get him closer to free agency. That's that's the MO as of late for a lot of these teams and a lot of these U.S. college players.
And I'm not saying that you're. I'm not saying that you're like planning on having him around for the playoffs in that situation. But I mean, if the guy is a good player, and he's played all season long at a very high level, and and you think he's NHL ready, if there's any chance that he can make an impact, and you've got a spot, maybe there's an injury, maybe there's something that works out, it's got to be worth considering. That's all I'm saying. And I mean, I'm not.
That's why I asked you the question, Teddy. This is the conversation we need, right?
But if it worked out that way, we have seen this happen in the past. It's not coming to me exactly what player I would be talking about, but we have seen that where guys have come in as rookies who barely played during the season and made an impact in the playoffs. So
Cale Makar is the guy that immediately jumps to mind. That came
Cole Caulfield too in Montreal. He did. So it's not unheard of, but I don't see an obvious spot for him in this Jets top 12. And sort of, seeing how Rick Bowness typically deploys his players, and most coaches, they often will defer to veteran guys rather than the youngins come playoff time, Dave.
I just want to add, there's also the possibility we haven't discussed, which is he signs his ELC, then signs a PTO, plays for the Moose, and goes and plays for them. If the Moose make the playoffs, they're in a playoff spot now. He could potentially get some runway with the Moose, play on the Moose, to end the regular season. That's the avenue I see more likely for him, just based on the Jets' past history. But your guys are right; it's possible. But I could see him, playing with the Moose, getting some regular season games with Manitoba, and then of course playing in the playoffs with those guys there. Those are all the Jets prospects, right? That's their young prospect pool. So that's kind of the avenue I would see the Jets taking with Rutger. But I do see, crazier things have happened. Let's put it that way.
Just one more thing on this, Ted. Just checked. Cale Makar played 2 years at UMass Amherst. And then if you remember in 2019-20, he didn't play for the Avalanche during the regular season and went right into the playoffs and played 10 games that year. So I'm just saying, I'm not comparing Rutger McGroarty to Cale Makar. I'm just saying when you have these special players, and Rutger McGroarty is a special player, like people are already talking about him as the future Jets captain. He hasn't even played a single NHL game. All I'm saying is...
He's not Cale Makar.
Well, I just said that. I said I'm not comparing the two. All I'm saying is there is the possibility he could play for the Jets in the playoffs. I think that's a reality.
Don't you guys think that he seems like a playoff player?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Given what we saw from him at the World Junior, I mean,
I would agree.
If it's a playoff kind of player, I think it's worth considering.
Look, we will find out more and more about this Winnipeg Jets team in the coming weeks as the trade deadline approaches, and then playoff season shortly thereafter.
I'm available for the Riser podcast, by the way, Ted. Just let me know.
Finally a plug. I've been hoping all day long we'd get something on that.
Plug it, Ted.
Hey, I plug Teddy, I plug jet setting like nobody else.
I know you are our biggest fan, and we appreciate that.
Me too. I'm following the Riser.
Yes. Well, hey, I finally am in the podcast world like you guys. It's only take me 15 years to catch up, but we're coming for you fast, guys. But really fun though. Really enjoying that with my buddy Greg Strong out of Toronto. A lot of national focus and a lot of kind of focus on getting to know journalists across the country and understanding a bit about how they got into the business and who they really are. And we've really enjoyed that aspect of the show.
we look forward to getting our invite any day now to join the show, but that's okay, Teddy.
Well,
we're not counting
Ted
or
remembers
anything.
this is like going back 15, maybe longer than that, Ted. I used to write those rising stars. I covered amateur athletes for the Winnipeg Sun. So Ted, as the sports editor, gave me my first break. I didn't necessarily go in the print media route, but hey, that's I do have a little bit of a journalism background.
Hey, man, I know. Where would you guys be without Red River College anyways, right?
Exactly.
Amen to that, Ted Wyman. You're right about that.
RRC
Teddy, thank
Polytech.
you. From
Thanks, Ted.
curling to hockey and everything in between, we look forward to your appearances on this show, and we appreciate you joining us this Saturday morning. We'll let you get on with your day, but we'll catch up again real soon.
Thanks for having me on, and especially thanks for having me before Chuck Hellebuck, because, man, I do not want to go after that guy.
Ted, thank you. We'll talk again real soon. There he goes, Ted Wyman joining us this morning. When we come back, trade deadline talk. It's a few weeks away, and then Chuck Hellebuck at the bottom of hour number 2. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. 2 qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now on this Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Still to come on the show, International Man of Mystery, Chuck Hellebuck joining us at the bottom of the hour. Reminder, later tonight, the Jets and the Canucks, they'll do battle, the Illegal Curve post-game show, 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 10:45 p.m. Mountain Time, where I'm currently residing for the next couple of days. Don't worry, I'll be back to the beauty of Winnipeg come Tuesday night's post-game show, the rematch, the heated rematch between the Jets and the Wild, the first time those two teams have met since L'Affaire Hartman broke out not that long ago, so that should be a doozy.
The problem is, Drew, that the problem is
that the Declan Chisholm revenge game, or is that the Cole Perfetti revenge game, guys?
Well, I think it's the former, not the latter, and I'll tell you why. Because the Wild are hard charging. I think they've won like 4 or 5 games in a row, and they're nipping at a playoff spot. So they actually have to play hockey on Tuesday. It can't just be about trying to take Nikolai Ehlers out for the rest of the season.
Did the Wild even want to make the playoffs? It's like, congratulations, you're going to get swept by Dallas.
or Vancouver, depending on which team it finishes atop and where and everything else. But time will tell on that front. Of course, we'll have it all covered for you on illegalcurve.com and here on our YouTube channel, as we always do. But of course, the Jets do have that Monday matinee in Calgary as well. So a busy little stretch for the Jets after so much time off throughout this course, throughout the majority of this month of February. We're about 2 weeks away, maybe 3 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline.
Yeah, exactly 3 weeks, Drew, March 9th.
Yeah, which will come on the Friday, March the 8th, in fact, Ezzy. So Friday, March the 8th is the trade deadline.
I thought it was March 9th.
No, that's okay. We'll forgive you on this one. It's the Friday.
Okay, I got a question for you, Drew. I'm going to put you on the spot here. I mentioned this on last post-game show. Which extremely famous rapper died on March 9th?
Tupac?
No. The other one.
Biggie.
Biggie Smalls. He died on March 9th.
Good to know. I didn't know that. But I look forward to seeing Ice Cube at the end of this month as well. So that'll be something I'm looking at.
It was a good day, Drew.
Fun. It was a good day. Indeed, it was. A lot of good things happened for me on that day, much like they did for Ice Cube in that legendary song.
Drew be clubbing.
Don't get me started. I don't want to start freestyling or anything here on the show.
Please
people
don't.
A little bit. Don't worry, I won't. I know my role, and that's not anything to do with it.
MWA, Mindell with attitude.
The trade deadline, as we've been talking about, and as it's getting closer and closer to being a reality, the Jets obviously made their initial big splash in Sean Monahan. And as you sort of broached the subject, that with the Jets scoring doldrums continuing, and it's been a factor for the last little while, should the Jets be looking more to further shore up the offensive side of their game? Maybe they should be in the market for a winger, top 9 winger, to really supplement some of their players. And I agree with you. I think that the Jets should be in the market for a winger. I think I mentioned this a few weeks back on the show, that I think that there is opportunity for the Jets to further reinforce their offensive bona fides. Not obviously would have to be somebody who fits into their defensive first structure. But as you mentioned, a number of the names, a number of the wingers that are sort of at the forefront, Jake Gensel, who the Jets have seen twice in the last little while, of course, now out of the lineup, going to be
one of the guys. We've got the comment up there. Sorry, Drew.
Yeah.
Sean mentions Anthony Duclair, who, of course, the Jets just played on the Sharks. But yeah, continue, because Jake Gensel is intriguing. He's out, we should mention, for 4 weeks. He's on long-term injured reserve. He's got an upper body injury, but it was reported by Elliot Friedman that the Penguins would still move him even though he's currently injured. He's in the last year of his contract.
He's a pending UFA. Anthony Duclair, who's on a go-nowhere San Jose Sharks team, but had some great success, or a pretty decent success last year with the Florida Panthers and their playoff run, where they made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So there's some intriguing names out there who are, and I do think the Jets are probably, kicking that around a little bit, as
I agree 100%. And I think Duclair was one guy. Like, there's other guys, right? Like Tarasenko, we talked about. Did you mention Frank Vatrano, Drew?
I haven't, but Frank Vatrano is another guy.
Frank Vatrano was
Anaheim.
one guy. Yeah, and obviously, guys, like, this is based on the Athletic trade bait board. This is based on the Daily Faceoff trade bait board, TSN's trade bait board. Like, these names are not, I'm not just, pulling them out of thin air, even though I would love to. I mean, these are guys in the last year of their contracts that I think are intriguing, right? Like, Vatrano's 29 years old, and his cap hit is lower than both Tarasenko and Jake Gensel. Tarasenko's at $5 million, and then Gensel's at $6 million, right? So I think the cost to acquire a guy like Frank Vatrano or Anthony Duclair would be much less than a Jake Gensel. Like, let's be honest here, guys. Crosby, Gensel, Malkin, like Letang, these guys are all close. Like, Gensel's won the Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh. We have no idea where the contract is at with Gensel, right? And the injury, I think, throws in a wrinkle there. So when you're looking at these guys, like Tarasenko, to me, I don't know what you would have to give up to acquire him from Ottawa. But when you look at Ottawa's core, right, with Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris and Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, like, I don't know.
Tim Stützle.
Yeah, Tim Stützle, sorry for forgetting him. I don't think that, a guy like Tarasenko really factors in. So that would be a pure rental, right? If you're acquiring Tarasenko, but he's a right winger, he's a goal scorer, right? Like, and I think 12 or 13 goals this year, like 14 maybe. Like Tarasenko to me could fit into your top 6. Now, who does that push out? Well, it probably pushes out a guy like Gabe Vilardi, maybe. I'm not sure if you're pushing out Connor or Ehlers out of your top 4. Maybe it pushes out Cole Perfetti. All I'm saying is, like, we talked about it. The Jets have been struggling to score goals for over a month now. This is going back 11, 12, 13 games. And yes, the Jets could explode for goals, starting tonight against Vancouver, Dave. But, I think that there's an argument to be made. If the Jets are all in, which we believe they are, why else would you require Sean Monahan if you're not trying to go on a long cup run, right, Dave? So I think, whether it's Tarasenko, whether it's Gensel, whether it's a guy like Anthony Duclair, like you could probably get Anthony Duclair for, I don't know, a 3rd round pick. And he's a guy that a couple years ago with Florida had 30 goals, guys. So Duclair, people say, oh, Duclair's not very good. Well, his numbers aren't very good on San Jose because San Jose is not a very good team. I think if you put Anthony Duclair on the wing with Sean Monahan, or, I mean, even if Anthony Duclair is on your 4th line, I'm just saying, like, I think that the Jets, you could make the argument they need a goal scoring infusion.
Dave? No, I mean, no. Look, what am I supposed to say? Like, there's no question about it. If you look at this Jets club, they're just not doing it. And when you look at the patterns and you say, okay, well, this has been a game or two, relax. This isn't a game or two. And again, this isn't a Jets team. Like, you can say, oh, well, they play a defensive style and it's tiring. Again, guys, when they had no Kyle Connor from December 10th till sometime in January, whenever it was, right? The fact of the matter is this team scored goals, right? They went 12-2-2. They were still scoring.
Right.
And we're hearing about this change in, I mean, look, like I said, I haven't looked at all the scores lately from the NHL, but the fact of the matter is that the Jets are, as we know, one of the stingiest teams in the NHL in terms of giving up goals. That comes with a cost. So we understand that. And again, like I said, I think that playoff games are more likely to be 2-1 than I think that they are to be 5-1? Yes, of course they are. So being able to play that style is important. But again, you have factors that work against you right now. Your special teams are not good, right? You're 24th and 26th in terms of penalty kill and power play. I mean, these are not good numbers. As we said, you need to get to, we didn't expect, like I said, I think on the last show, 51 games in, this team is what they are. Like they've had 51 games of this. Their special teams haven't been good. They obviously got better for a stretch, but because they had such an abysmal start to the season, we knew they weren't going to get to the top 10. But you wanted to get to some sort of measure of respectability, 18-21, something in that range. The Jets haven't been able to do that. And so, again, your special teams aren't working. PK's gotten better.
Frank Vetrano has 9 power play goals. So I like, that's why I mainly included him on this list. He's got 23 goals this year. Like, and Vetrano has 1 year left on his contract, Drew. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that all the other guys like Duclair, Tarasenko, Gensel are in the last year of their contracts. Vetrano has 1 year left at $3.5 million.
So, with everything that Dave just said about special teams and things of that nature, should the Jets maybe be looking for an offensive upgrade on the back end rather than a winger upgrade? I mean, the pressure. Look, the only offensively inclined, really, I mean, Neil Pionk has flashes of offensive talent, but they're so few and far between. It's really Josh Morrissey shouldering a lot of that load on the back end when it comes to offense from defense. So should the Jets, to your point when you asked Ted about it last segment, Ezzy, should the Jets be looking for a offensive upgrade on the back end? I don't know that they need the quote unquote shutdown defender.
Because an offensive upgrade on the back end. Who's an offensive upgrade on the back end?
You're going to say Ville Heinola is what you're going to say.
Well,
right, Dave?
I mean, that is his MO. I mean, he's an offensively talented guy who can make a great first pass. And you do wonder about the passing from the defense and how it's stalling the creation of offense. So, I mean, look, if that's the reality, Drew, I don't think you need to go out and look for it and acquire it and spend an asset when you have that. Now, again, the one thing I want to make clear, and I was always on board with this because I never thought it was going to be, I said this, I wrote about this, I said this, Ville Heinola's played 12 games. Everybody else is 40 to 50 NHL games. Ville Heinola has played 12 AHL games. There's still flaws in his game. Rick Bowness talked about it. Mark Morrison obviously told Rick Bowness about it. The fact of the matter is there are still, like, people see that I clip a highlight and it's like, oh, well, look what he's doing in the AHL. But there's so many other aspects of his game. And I'm not tearing apart Ville Heinola. There's lots of guys who make mistakes, but you want them making those mistakes in the AHL. So again, I didn't anticipate that Heinola would be an option for this Jets club for at least like another month or so. Maybe now it's a little less than that. But the fact of the matter is, he is a player who can bring that offensive ability. That is his game. He just needs time to develop it, continue to develop the way he looked in the preseason, right? We all thought he looked fantastic in the preseason. Obviously, the coaching staff did too, guys. I mean, you could say Rick Bowness was blowing smoke just to create like an illusion. Mm-hmm. But he said that Ville Heinola made this team out of training camp. Well, that meant that Ville Heinola was your sixth defenseman, really, and he was going to be in the Nate Schmidt spot. Now, he got injured again in that September 29th game against the Senators, and of course has to have ankle surgery. So, his season is done for the next few months. And so he's just getting back to that full strength. And again, like I said, 12 games. He's going to play a bunch here with the Moose. I don't anticipate you'll see him unless there's an injury before that.
Well, I find it really interesting, Ezzy, that you sort of, not that there's a disconnect, because I don't want to say that's probably too strong of a word, but I go back to last Saturday's show where JP VJ talked about how, in JP's mind and in JP's experience, having missed all that time that Ville did with the injury, it might be too big of a mountain to climb to get back to the NHL level this year, to the same level that he was playing at, say, pre-injury during training camp. And then you listen to what Rick Bowness said this week, where, that Ville's skating he's not at where he was during training camp. And then you hear what Kevin Cheveldayoff says on that Neil Smith podcast that Dave has posted on illegalcurve.com if you missed it. And it's almost like, JP VJ, who's not with the team, but a former player, is saying this, and Rick Bowness is sort of more on that side and echoing sort of those comments. And then you have what Kevin Cheveldayoff saying about, still sort of talking up Ville as a possibility. And, you wonder if there's, if everybody's sort of on the same page when it comes to Ville and the rest of his season.
Yeah, I think actions speak louder than words. And what I mean by actions is Brendan Dillon was suspended for 3 games, and that was the opportunity, if you wanted to call up Ville Heinola. What they did was they played Logan Stanley and didn't have an extra defenseman. So again, I'm with Dave. I am very high, not on anything else, high on Ville Heinola here. I do think that he has a great NHL career ahead of him. Like, I think his upside is a top 4 defenseman who could probably put up, 35 to 45 points. I don't necessarily think he's going to be in the, the Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar type of, I don't think he's going to be a 70-point defenseman at the NHL level, Dave. Right. By the way, 35 to 45 points is really good for a defenseman.
Nowadays it is.
That puts you in the top 50 in NHL defensemen in terms of points. But, the guy, Drew, the only guy to me that's name is out there that would have that impact offensively is Jacob Chychrun. And he's got a modified no trade clause. He's got 1 year left on his contract. But if you're the Ottawa Senators and you're trading Jacob Chychrun, and I think they gave up, a first-round pick, second-round pick, something else, you got to think that the Senators are probably asking for Ville Heinola, or at the very least, they're going to be asking for a prospect in return. Like you're not going to get Jacob Chychrun for a second-round draft pick. You're going to have to give up quite a bit for Jacob Chychrun. But aside from that, Drew, like the names that are out there, like Chris Tanev, Noah Hannafin. I mean, Hannafin to me, I don't think really is a match for the Jets. Hannafin's a good defenseman, and just because I said that, they're probably going to acquire him. But when you're talking about guys like, Ilya Labushkin on Anaheim, or, we talked about Sean Walker, like these guys don't really move the needle offensively. They're decent defensemen, but I think that's probably the guy you're referring to, right? When you're talking about, should the Jets maybe be targeting more of an offensive defenseman? Chychrun's got like 8 goals and 29 points, something like that. Whereas Tanev is a shutdown right side defenseman. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, are the Jets going to concentrate more on defense, or are they going to concentrate more on offense? And that's why I've said, I think you need to do both.
Well, from the back end, if you're looking at what they need from the back end, from the defense, I think you need more offense from the defense right now. That's where you need to be, finding that's where there's opportunity, I would say. Right now, the defensive structure of this team, and in the 5-man unit and on the back end and everything else is pretty solid, that I think you can go forward with that come playoff time. But, think about, anytime Josh Morrissey, has a little bit of a dip in his game, as you're always going to have over the course of an 82-game season, there's nobody on the back end right now who's really able to pick that up. And with all due respect to Ville Heinola, asking him to be that guy come playoff time or come, the last 10 or 15 games of the season after you've missed so much time is a pretty big task for a guy who's never been an NHL regular. So, I just don't know that that's a reasonable request, Dave, of a young player at this stage of his career, especially given the time he's missed this year.
No, and Drew, I'm not here to argue with you. I think the reality is, look, the Jets organization has to, and even if it doesn't happen this year, they'll have no choice but to make it happen next year because he's no longer waiver exempt. The team will take him. A team will do what the Minnesota Wild are going to do with Declan Chisholm and give him an opportunity. So that's fine. And again, that's a function of his waiver status. We knew that. I said this in the summer. I said, I know folks want to see Ville, but the reality is that, because he's waiver exempt for this year, he's most likely. Now, he played really well in the preseason.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that you can't ignore the reality, which is his Ville-ness, as I was referencing it the other day, is not there right now. It's not there to the degree that we saw it in the preseason, that we saw it last year. So again, I know that everybody wants to just put him in. And, KG3, who was in Winnipeg, I think, for that Penguins game, hopefully wearing his IC toque, which one we don't know because he's got like so many. But the fact is, he's right. Like, you're not putting Ville Heinola, first of all, and Doug's right also. You couldn't actually do it without putting someone on waivers because of the roster, because even though Brendan Dillon was suspended, he was still considered a rostered player. So they couldn't even do it anyways. But the fact of the matter is that Logan Stanley made more sense for Brendan Dillon because that's what Rick Bowness would do. He'd replace size with size. And again, that's not a shock. And the other thing is, and again, it's kind of the point of my kind of ramble here. It's opportunity, right? Dylan Samberg got an opportunity and he ran with it. He didn't say, okay, I got 1 or 2 games here, and then if I don't play well, I'm out. Because it's very hard for those guys. Kovacevic in Montreal, same thing, right? Like, he got that 1 game with Winnipeg, gets claimed by Montreal. Then he's already played over 100 games now for the Habs. So the fact of the matter is, these guys get this runway, and suddenly then they feel relaxed and they can play their game. There's not that stress. Now, so my point I'm making is that if you want to call Ville Heinola up next month, and if you want to give him some sort of opportunity, and that's usually created because someone gets injured, and you want to give him a little bit of runway to see what he can do, not 1 or 2 games. It has to be a 5 to 10 game block, and then you can see what you've got. If you don't, then you're never going to know. You just won't. You just can't. So you have to.
But at the same time, you can't call him up to demonstrate that until he's ready, until he's at that point.
Which is why I said it won't be till next month, because then at least he'll have 20 AHL games under his belt.
Right.
He'll be much more closely aligned to what he maybe was like in the preseason, and then you've got a guy who's playing much more, to his level. And again, like I said, that's why I wasn't surprised when everyone's like clamoring. I'm like, guys, he's played 12 games. He's still making mistakes. Like, did you see in the game against Grand Rapids where he made a mistake at the blue line, ends up as a goal against, which is the ultimate? Again, not a big deal in the AHL. You know what Mark Morrison does? Throws him back out there, plays him in the next shift. But the fact of the matter is, in the NHL, especially with young players, we know that the leash is short. So when these guys make mistakes, it's a lot more costly. It's a lot more focused. So I'm just saying that you want to put him in a place for success. That's the whole idea.
To the subject matter of this segment, though, I think that, at least from my perspective, yes, the Jets' acquisition of Sean Monahan is a good move. You shore up the offense and everything else, but I think there still needs to be more to come for this Winnipeg Jets team come the trade deadline. I see that Chuck Hellebuck is ready to join us backstage, so we're going to go to break. I'm going to bid everyone adieu. I might see you later on for the post-game show, but I'm going to turn it over to Dave and Ezzy to drive this bus for the remainder of the Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So thank you to everyone for gracing me with your presence and everything else. Dave, Ezzy, and Chuck Hellebuck up next here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Stay tuned, everyone. Don't go anywhere. IC rolls on.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, which is now just myself and Ezzy Ginsburg, but it wasn't just going to be the two of us. We are going to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend,
myself,
Chuck Hellebuck.
Ezzy Ginsburg. It wasn't just going to be the two of us.
We got some reverb there, but
okay, hold on there.
Myself, Chuck Hellebuck. Ezzy Ginsburg. It wasn't just going to be the two of us. We got some reverb there.
I'll mute Chuck's mic for a second while he gets his. He's got some reverb there. He's got our audio there, but okay, hold on. I'll unmute now, Chuck.
I'll mute Chuck's mic
we're
for
still
a second
picking
while
up.
He's got some reverb there. He's got our audio there, but.
Well, that's Chuck Hellebuck, who's working on. Oh, hold on, let's see. There we go. There we go. The international influencer himself.
Now we're good.
Now we are good.
Sorry about
Chuck,
that.
Happens all the time. All good, Chuck.
I was watching on my phone, and then it popped up on here, and I forgot I had it on my phone.
Well, we're happy to welcome you to your first appearance on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the international influencer. Let's start with that, Chuck. You got that title on the dad's trip. I was in the arena for when they put you up on the screen, and it got a lot of play on social media. So what does it mean to let's start with that, getting that recognition. Obviously, you're a very successful YouTuber with your channel, so we could probably learn a few things from you in that regard. But just, getting that recognition and having fun with the Jets fans and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that just was a surprise to me. It was kind of I don't know, it's kind of a joke, I guess, from the media guys or whatever. But the whole thing started, when you're when you're doing YouTube videos or whatever, you're telling a story. Really, that's all it's really doing, whether it's a technical story or whatever. So this is my third dad trip, and so I was a lot more comfortable, and I wanted to really tell the story behind the scenes of what a grind, it is. I know they're paid well and everything, but it's such a grind that, you're going from the bus to the plane to a bus to the hotel. You get in there at 2 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you may take a bus to the rink and, practice or whatever. And then a bus to the game. And then after the game, you're bus to the plane and next one. And I'm like, I got to show some behind the scenes here and show what's going on. So I just started posting, and plus I wasn't putting out content on my channel. So I'm like, well, the people who follow me, may wonder what the heck I'm doing. So I said, I'll just post it out there on Twitter, and it took off. Yeah, it just literally took off. And I guess it was telling a decent story because people were following it. And then I, throw a little, comedy in there. I tried to anyway. If no dad's eating the salads, and it was just fun because I watched it. I had a bolus, nice salad. Krev does a great job. He takes care of everything. And I just watched that salad not get touched while everyone's eating the burgers and the ribs and everything else. Okay, well, I got to post that. So,
absolutely love that. I mean, your content is awesome, and obviously, I was going to say with the last name Hellebuck, everybody here in Manitoba, I mean, people are just going to love anybody with the last name Hellebuck, right? Because obviously, your son is such a not only an amazing goaltender, but a great person. And wanted to ask you about Wednesday night. Connor got the shutout. It was only 17 saves, but I mean, he still had to make some big saves, and a shutout is a shutout, right? And I saw you tweet that, you can say the word now because obviously there's the jinx factor, but I wanted to ask you like on a kind of game by game basis, not when you're on the road with the team, but when you're just watching at home back in Michigan, like, do you text Connor usually after a win or a big shutout, or how does that work? Do you wait until the next day? Like, how does that work with kind of how you talk to Connor? Like, do you give him a little bit of space, or do you text him right after the game's over and say, nice shutout, son?
It depends. First of all, it was 16 saves because Scheifele got the 17th. So,
oh yeah, that's right.
So I did text him about that. But no, when he first started out, I would text him just kind of give encouragement and just give some dad feedback. But it pretty quickly, I knew shut up. let him do his thing, and then now it's kind of I text it when I feel I need to or want to, or just I'll text him, how the kid's doing, or just non-hockey stuff, just because he gets enough hockey stuff as it is, and then I want to know what's going on with the family, So it's a mixed bag now. He didn't need my help at all initially. He's not learning anything from me, but I'm just there as a dad to say, hey, keep going, kid, and chase the dream, and I get a front row seat.
Chuck, I've watched your interviews when you did it with Huss, and I saw, some of the other conversations you've had. So we know that, the background, but maybe you could share with our audience the idea of the Hellebuck family and how impactful hockey was to you growing up, and in Michigan, obviously there's a huge hockey community. So what was that like for you?
We weren't that much of a hockey family. That's why he had such an unorthodox way to get there, because we didn't know the path. I raced stock cars, when I was his age, just amateur stuff, and go-karting. My wife's dad raced motorcycles and stuff. So our plan was I was going to take the kids go-karting, and we were going to race go-karts. That was the plan. And his brother, who was a really good hockey player, just didn't quite get the break. So he was a natural on skates. So at he's skating around in my rollerblades that come up to his knees. So he's just skating around the basement. And Connor just instantly went to net. So they would just, shoot and do one-on-ones all the time. But it really started. My older brother, 6 years older, his son, which I don't know, so he was 11 years old, and they had a birthday party. They had a street hockey. He eventually played some ice hockey himself. But that's how it started. We'd have this annual street hockey game on his birthday, and then the boys just watched and wanted to be part of it, and they started in roller and then eventually went to ice. But that's really what sparked it. My brother was a Red Wings season ticket holder, and we all kind of followed. We all watched hockey, but it was wasn't part of it. I played basketball. I could barely. I had to learn the skates to help coach them, so that's how bad I was.
Well, it sounds like the Hellebuck family is a multi-sport family, right? Like, it sounds like everybody in your own family had their own specialties, right? And yeah. I wanted to ask you about Connor. Obviously has a lot of confidence, and that's something that's been. I don't think you can be the best goaltender on the planet, and I am saying it, Chuck. He is the best goaltender on the planet. I'm not saying he's top three. I'm going to throw out Vezina Buck right now. But I mean, where do you think that confidence comes from? Is that something that Connor always had at an early age? Because, like you said, it was a bit of an unorthodox route. Like, it was clear that when the Jets drafted him, even though he was a 5th round pick, it was clear that Connor was going to get to the NHL. His numbers at UMass Lowell were phenomenal, and then he was good in the American Hockey League. But going back to that confidence, because that seems like that's always been a real strength of Connor's.
Yeah, I think it just comes from playing, and then just our family in general. You don't want to play Monopoly with us. You don't want to play Risk with us. We're not good losers. We're competitive as can be, and it's horrible. We did a family fantasy football, and we had to quit because it was getting too nasty. And so from a competitive point of view, yeah. And sports wise, my wife was an athlete. I was an athlete. It just in all different sports, right? So it's there in the genes, I guess. But when they were younger, I brought home the movie The Secret, based on the book The Secret, and it's really just the power of positive thinking, and really what the whole idea behind it was, I've always believed, do what you can, do the best you can, and achieve what you want. It's not going to be easy. It's you're going to have to work for it, but if you really want it, you can get it. And life's just going to throw a bunch of crap in your way, but you got to want it. And that was kind of the message. Well, he took it to heart. Like, I couldn't even believe it. His brother did too. His brother started a internet business in the basement. He was a junior in high school, and he still runs that business. It supports him and his family. And now he's chasing the dream to become a professional bass fisherman. So it runs in there. But Connor, from early on, just I gave him a cork board that says, put in the center of that cork board your idea and just focus on it. And it was goalie, and the scariest moment, I think, in some respects from a parent, is he was entering high school. I told him, I said, because he would skate out during the spring and that, so I wanted to see on the other side of the puck and have fun. But I said, kind of decide. And he goes, well, I want to be a goalie. And but I told him both, have a backup plan. And Chris's was the business. Well, Connor told me to my face, his dad, I don't have a backup plan. I go, it's okay. It takes time. He goes, no, you understand. I don't want a backup plan because it's going to distract me. I'm going to go. I'm going to make the NHL. I don't care how long it takes or what it's going to take. I'm just going to do it. And that's when I seen the determination. That's when I was like, whoa. And I said, okay, kid, do it. Do it.
That's awesome.
He took it.
And was that now, what age was that when he told you that?
Let's see, he's freshman in high school, probably about 14 years old.
So you as a parent, though, so you hear your son say that, and parents obviously want what's best for their children, and they want them to follow the path that's true to their heart. So, but how daunting was that for you and your wife to be able to be like, okay, this is the path, and again, he went to Texas. That how unconventional is it? And again, just from a knowledge standpoint, how daunting was that to be like, we don't know what's next, but you had to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, life will throw obstacles. It's just how you deal with them, and it's your anxiety's getting away, and I understand all that. I've dealt with all that too. But yeah, I think his mother was definitely more worried about it. What does this mean? And I didn't know what it meant. It's like, he's freshman in high school, right? There was no thought of him going to NHL. I mean, that was not like my idea was, if you can make it to a college, get a partial scholarship, and help pay for college, hey, that's a success. Mm-hmm. And so that was my thinking. And I'm like, okay, go for it, see what happens. And, it's just my thought was, what's the fallback plan? But when he graduated high school, I mean, there was a high school coach who was a USHL scout. Everyone knew him in, that level, but the AAA and the scouts didn't know who he was. But everyone at the lower level knew hey, he's stoned a bunch of teams, so they knew his stats. They knew who he was. Well, this guy set up a tryout out in where was it? Iowa. I think it was Iowa. Yeah, so the USHL team, and so we fly out there and find out, the goalie coach wasn't even there, mm-hmm. and he felt so disrespected, and so they put him in a practice, and I'm just watching this. I'm like, as a high school kid against USHL players, and they do a one-on-one at the end, and he's just stoning these guys. He just, no one's going to score on him. I could see in his body language, because I'm sitting up in the stands, but I could see in the body language that you guys don't know what the hell's happening right now. You are not going to score on this kid because he's in the zone, and he did. And it was a competition between him and the backup. Whoever, won get to go to the locker room. The other one had to clean up the pucks. And he says, I'm not cleaning up their damn pucks. So, he went in the locker room, got his stuff, talked to the coach briefly and said, let's go, and then the coach come out and kind of passed by and gave us a passing, whatever. And it was disrespectful. But I think that planted a seed for him that from there, he says, any opportunity, he's going to make the most of it. Any opportunity to go to another team and try out, he's going to make the most of it. And so it's probably the best thing that could have happened, he went to Youngstown. He got a tryout at Youngstown, and he USHL, and he drove down there in our car. He called me up, says, Dad, I guess I'm coming home. And then he called me back like 5 minutes later. He says, Dad, they want me to stay another day. And I go, holy cow, okay. Got him a hotel room, a whole bit. He went back and played their last day of their camp. And then they had to tell him, they said, look, we didn't know who you were. And you just phenomenal. But we've already picked our 3 goalies. Otherwise, you'd be here. So we're going to keep an eye on you. And that, I think, planted the seed that he can do it. He came back from that going, I know what I need to do. And that's when he got the tryout with Odessa. And he went there in the first day, just dominated. And Joe Clark pulled him off the ice early and said, we should have drafted you. Because he had that chip on his shoulder, too. He wasn't drafted. And he pulled him off, said, you made the team. Just go. And he went and got his fishing pole and went fishing. And that was in Minnesota. And then, then we had to send him to Texas with a host family, which we never did. We never did the traveling. So we didn't know. He was 17, and I said, well, there you go, kid. Just make it work. Call me if you need anything, and we'll go from there. And it was a learning experience, but worked out great. He had a great host family, and he went down there and tore it up.
That's such an awesome story. And I know that people watching live or on the replay podcast, people are going to love hearing that, because it shows you, like you said, right? It's that, to me, what stands out about that is, like you said, life is going to throw you a lot of different things, and it's about perseverance, right? Connor didn't let the fact that he wasn't drafted. He said, I'm going to show you. And boy, did he ever show them, because not only did he go on to a great college career, he's like I said, I'm confident in saying that he's the best goaltender on the planet right now. And I wanted to ask you, Chuck, about the 8-year contract. Because obviously, I'm sure that you don't follow it as much as, us and the media and the fans do. But, there was a lot of speculation about Connor and Scheifele. Were they going to be traded? Was this going to be the last year of their contracts? And then in early October, I think it was early October, your son and Scheifele signed the big 8-year contracts. And
7 years, right?
It was this year. It's.
Oh, sorry. You're right. Yes. Sorry, Chuck. I added a year there. I apologize. You're right. It was 7-year contracts, including this year. He's under contract for eight more years. But, and again, you can't speak for Connor, but I mean, that must have been a little bit difficult for him, right? Because, there were people speculating and saying this or that, but I think Connor was very, forthright when he said, I want to be here and I want to win a Stanley Cup. He didn't just say, I want to be here. He made it clear that, he wanted to win a Stanley Cup with the Jets.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't privy to everything, to some of it, and some of it, I'll never share, but, yeah, there's, that's a tough decision for anybody. I know him and Scheifele talked. I talked to Brad, his dad, and, but the bottom line is he wants a cup. I mean, he's said it numerous times. It's just, he's playing to win, and that's the hell of a trade. It's like losing sucks, and it's unacceptable. So you play to win. You do what you ever got to do. So, I don't know all the the business details of everything, who was interested and what the talks were or whatever. But Winnipeg was always part of the discussion. It was never not part of that discussion. And when he told me, I told him, I says, do what's best for you and your family. And, would I have loved to be closer? Sure. I'd love to be in the U.S. Sure. That's a personal reason, but that's got nothing to do with him. So that's why I told him, do what's best for you and your family. And he figured it all out, and he saw the potential and he believes it can be done, and otherwise he wouldn't be there. And now he's ready to win a cup. So it's as simple as that. It's, if they didn't have the pieces that he thought could win it, then maybe it would have been different. But it's just a matter. It's never easy. It's you got to have faith and you got to believe. But like he says, you got to believe that you're winning. You got to think like you're winning, even when you're losing. Because if you start thinking about losing, then you start doing things like a loser. He says you got to think like a winner, and the winning will come. And when you're winning, you keep thinking like that. He's just like, it's what permeates your thinking. It's what you do. It's what drives you. It's what makes things happen. That's probably comes across as confidence, but it's more of a belief system,
right? That
I want to win. And today we're going to win, and this is what I got to do to win. And we won, so let's go in the next one. It's really, really simple. Can come across as cocky, overconfident, whatever, but that's really his thought process.
And it's interesting. It's interesting you should say that, Chuck, because I remember in games where he would give up, let's say 4 goals, 5 goals, and he'd like, well, I like my game. I like the details. I like this. And sometimes people would be like, really? Like, this is, but you'd hear that. And I mean, again,
then Connor would get a shutout the next game.
No, but then, and I knew him because obviously I covered him in the AHL. So I knew obviously what he was like with the Moose, and I wasn't in St. John, so I didn't cover him in the Ice Caps. But my point is he understood that, but it's funny because you're right. It's unusual. It's an unusual style of thinking, but you can see it's elevated him to what he's become because of it.
Yeah. And like I remember that one in New York where we gave up 5 goals toward the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
We gave up 5 goals, and he comes off the ice and tells them, "I'm going to win a Vezina this year."
Yeah.
And people looking at him. But I watched that game, and I watched it, and I went, he was in position. He got a few deflections or bad bounces, and you'll say it's all excuses, but you watch goaltending enough, and I'm by no means an expert, but I've watched enough, and I'm going, kid, I wouldn't change a damn thing. You were where you're supposed to be, a few little whatevers, and you're stopping a bunch of those. And then I read, it's like, it's got a goalie situation in Winnipeg, and I'm like, I just laugh. It's like, yeah, right. And I think, like you said, he came back with a shutout or 1-goal game, whatever. And, it was never a question again. And nothing against, I think Brossoit was a goalie then, nothing against LB. I love LB. He's a great goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Great goalie. He could be a starter anywhere as far as I'm concerned. So to have both guys as part of the tandem, I think it's a winning combination. But he knows his game,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people don't understand goaltending. I certainly will not claim to understand it, but I know a little more than average. But only goalies understand goalies, and it's just he knows. Trust him, and he'll figure it out.
Yeah, he could write a few textbooks at this point on goaltending. Chuck, I wanted to ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but it was announced recently that there's going to be the Four Nations tournament in 2025. And then the NHL has announced that they will go to the Winter Olympics
in Italy.
And obviously, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck there's going to be a couple of excellent American goaltenders facing off tonight, because I believe Thatcher Demko is going to play against Connor Hellebuyck, unless that changes. But I mean, Demko's in the conversation as well. I think Jake Ottinger on Dallas. But just wanted to ask you, is that something that Connor's mentioned to you? Or have you guys talked about that at all? Like, because it's been a while since, since 2016 that we've had best on best at the World Cup level or the Olympic level. Is that something Connor has talked to you about at all?
Briefly. I mean, we talked about it. I told him, I said, if you get picked to go to Italy, I'm going. I told
Chuck, can I come too?
Yeah, I told my wife, I said, she don't like to fly, it's a long flight. I says, you don't have to go. She's not as big a hockey fan, but she's always there, always supporting. But I'm going. If my son's, I don't care if he's a backup, he's in the Olympics, I'm going. So it's, but yeah, we've talked briefly about it from the past, but it's, I think in his case, it's like, a nice experience, feather in the cap, the whole bit, but it still comes back to that same statement. wants a cup. Yep. And if he win a gold medal, sure. I mean, he won with the bronze in the World Cup there several years ago, and had a heck of a game. So that was exciting to watch. And unfortunately, I couldn't be at that one. So that's why I said I don't care what happened. I'm going to Italy if he's called. So as far as us talking about it, yeah, it's it gets talked about, but nothing.
Sure.
Nothing major. It's kind of in the future. Right now, the focus is play the best he can, keep his game going, keep the team going. Let's win this. Let's make it to the playoffs. Let's get to the playoffs, and hopefully let's take it right to the cup. That's the talk.
I suspect that the thousands of folks who are going to listen to this are going to be very happy to hear that kind of talk, because that's their focus as well, Chuck. And this is Chuck Hellebuck. He's joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday morning, where we start every Saturday talking about the Jets, sometimes about the Moose, at 9:00 in the morning. Chuck, I wanted to take you back in time because, we used to go to the drafts every year. Actually, 2012, the year Connor
we didn't go that year. That was Pittsburgh, right, Dave?
It was Pittsburgh, and it was actually the only year we didn't go to the draft.
We weren't there either.
And so that was what I was going to ask you. Did I couldn't remember. Did Connor go? And was there any discussion about that? How did that set up? And what was it like when he did get picked? So obviously he didn't go. You guys were probably back in Michigan, but what was it like when he got selected, and what was that process like for your family?
Yeah, like I told you, we didn't understand it. So we didn't know what happened. I mean, he didn't, it was his last year that he was eligible. Right. Mm-hmm. And we knew there was interest, he had gone to a World Cup tryout. He had ruptured his spleen playing roller hockey just not long before that World Cup tour tryout, and he had recovered. It was scary times, and he got himself back in shape to make that tryout, and it was kind of pushing a little bit, but he was dead. He was nothing's going to stop him, and that's when I knew there was a Winnipeg scout there really probing me, because I was watching and he's asking me questions. So that was my only inkling. Connor knew, there was a lot of interest, but basically he was coaching goalies in the off season, and he was in between training sessions when he got the call. I was helping my other son Chris work on his car. We were up to our elbows in grease, and fixing stuff, and all of a sudden all our phones just blew up. We weren't even really watching, because we were like, we didn't know what we really didn't know. It's so our phones blew up, and then we went back and watched stuff. He's had his interview right there at the rink, and then we all went to dinner that night, and we're, what just happened? We were all just in this pleasant shock. We went over to his grandparents, and we went out to a restaurant, steakhouse, and said, what happened? We don't even know what happened. And just kind of sat in the glow of the excitement of it all and go, okay, what happens next? Yeah. We had no idea. So it was very unorthodox in our approach, and probably, maybe should have done a little more homework and maybe been there, but there was no indication that that would happen, and it's just another step in the unorthodox way he got to the NHL, I guess.
And so what did you know about Winnipeg before he got drafted, if anything? And then were you kind of like, well, okay, now we got to figure out this Winnipeg thing?
Yeah, well, I knew about Winnipeg 1.0, and then moving, and then I knew that the team had come back, but it didn't really follow it that much. So I'm like, wait, where's Winnipeg? Isn't that north of? That's cold there, isn't it? and so yeah, but they're like, okay, yeah. Then I started. Oh yeah, I know this team. You recognize players and that, but it's we were solid Red Wings fans, and the focus was always battling with Colorado and Chicago and the whole bit, more East Coast type stuff. So we didn't see Winnipeg that often, so we didn't know much about it. So yeah, when he got called to, in fact, he got called to fly up for training camp, we had to rush and get him a passport.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, it's I've been there many times now. Of course, he lives there, and it's just the city has treated him, him and his family so good, and treat us good when they're there. And It's become kind of a second home. So it's been an experience. It's been really good, and nothing but good things to say about Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think you already know this, but your son is, well, you're a kind of a big deal as well in Manitoba. Both of you guys. Not sure who's the bigger star now, but we just have a few more questions for you. And we want to ask you about 3D printing, because that's actually something that fascinates me. I don't know a lot about it, but we want to ask you about how you got into that and Filament Friday and everything like that. But I also wanted to go back, because I messaged you a couple of weeks ago. We wanted to get you on for during the All-Star break. But you mentioned to me that you were on vacation, and I just wanted to just go back a couple weeks, and I'm not sure how much you caught of the All-Star game, but I mean, just how nice was that for you though to watch your son? Because obviously, like you mentioned, we talked about earlier, the regular season's a grind, right? And you want to get into the playoffs and go on a nice Stanley Cup run. But for Connor, that must have been such a nice break. I mean, I'm not sure, he probably would have liked to go to Costa Rica or Mexico or something like that as well. But I'm sure for him it was an honor, and just, nice to be, around all the, the pomp and the circumstance of the All-Star break.
Sure. I mean, this was his fourth All-Star, and I've been to the three previous. We actually scheduled, we were in Disney. I got a big 2-bedroom suite for us to enjoy that week off. And we had scheduled that way ahead of time. And his sister and her fiance were coming in like midweek. So, it was time to hang with the grandchildren and go to Disney, go to Magic Kingdom a whole bit, enjoy some sunshine. And then, of course, he got the nod. And then he had to leave early, and he's like, "Well, Dad, you coming?" And I go, "I think I'm staying here in the sunshine." But it was because his sister was coming in, and I couldn't just say I had the room and everything. But it was like, no, it was. I think it was more fun for him in many ways because his son Hugh is, he's just a hockey nut. The kid if he keeps going, he's going to be another hockey player because he just loves the sport. And so I think it was a lot of fun for him to take Hugh around behind the scenes. And I saw a joy in him that I didn't see at the previous ones. I mean, always happy to be there, but it's just to take his son around and of course his wife and daughter, Andrea and Violet. It was a family thing, and it was great. My brother went in my place, and Andrew's dad was there his first time. So I think it was a great experience for everybody involved. And but yeah, that was special because he took his son around.
All right. Well, Chuck, I'm going to ask you a hard-hitting question. Ezzy's going to ask you about the 3D printing, but I got to ask you this one. First of all, it's a two-parter, though. Number one, who got Connor into fishing? Was that a thing from you? And the second part is, you said your son Chris is becoming a professional bass fisherman, and you spoke about how competitive your family is when you're playing Monopoly or Risk or anything like that. I can understand that sentiment, for the record. So if that's the case, when Connor and Chris are fishing together in the summer, what is that like when those two are competing on the boat?
So your first question, as far as the fishing, their grandfather and my father-in-law got them into fishing. When they were young, they'd go fish. Grandpa would take them out fishing. I drove the boat. I like driving. I like racing the cars and stuff. I'm like, I'll drive the boat. I would scan the lake, looking for drop offs, whatever. You guys want to go to that spot? Well, I'm okay, get you there. And then I'd help, put the bait on the line when they were younger and a whole bit. But no, I honestly, I love the tournaments. I've done a few tournaments with them. I love it because it's a window. It's a challenge. There's the challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got how big a fish? You get 5 to keep, and how big a fish can you catch? I love that. But as far as just going out fishing, I find it boring as can be. And they love it. They just love it. So, but you said about Chris is they're real competitive. He's trying to make it. But when they're in the summer, they really don't fish against each other. Rarely. They often team up. There'll be a 2-man tournament, and they kill it. I mean, they show up at a tournament. In most cases, it's like, oh crap, the Hellebuck brothers are here, and they've won several tournaments. They have competed against each other, and Connor has actually admitted to me, he says, "Dad, I almost can't keep up with Chris anymore. He's gotten so good. He knows how to switch. They got 14 different poles with different lures, and they know what they're doing. But yeah, I almost can't compete with him anymore. He's so it's if they tend to compete together, and then we'll go to the weigh-ins, and it's just fun. It's just it's fun to watch. They're usually in the top 3 and do pretty well. They do pretty well. So
have they crossed paths with Big Buff? Because Big Buff, you see him around Lake of the Woods, and he's winning tournaments and everything like that. Have they ever got together fishing, or has Buff given your son tips or anything?
Oh yeah, well, Buff got Connor into ice fishing up there in Manitoba, and but yeah, he still talks to him. Connor keeps in touch with Buff, and I think they've organized some fishing time. I think Chris has come up there and gone fishing with him before.
Awesome.
So yeah, I remember first time I met Buff. It was a first dad trip, and he comes racing in the morning. He comes, sits down at the table, and he wanted to talk fishing. And I'm like, sorry, it's his grandpa, not me. I think I saw the biggest disappointment on Buff's face. You know, oh crap, I don't want to talk to you. we had. He's a great guy. I had a great time talking to him, but yeah, I lost a few points there because I wasn't big into fishing.
I love it. His Buff's love for fishing is absolutely legendary, right? Like I think that's the only time you see Buff is when he's caught a fish or something like that, or so. That's pretty awesome. And yeah, just final question. Just wanted to ask you about 3D printing because it's not something. It's a relatively new thing, right? It's in the last, 10 years or so, 15 years or so. You would know better than I would. But I just wanted to ask you kind of how you got into that. And you've become not only an international influencer in the hockey world, but I know you've got a big fault. I think you have I want to say 300,000 or something. Almost, yeah. It's huge. I mean, can you also help us get there to 300,000? Because we're about to hit 6,000, Chuck, and we've been around for 15 years doing this hockey show. But yeah, just how did you get into it, and like where did the love for this come from? Because it's obviously something that's only going to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, well, actually, it's been around for a long time. Probably about 40 years. It's the original stereolithography machines, the big ones, Yeah. So I worked at Ford, and that's where I first saw it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. But it's kind of like computers, they're big, took up rooms, and eventually we got home computers. Well, now about 12 years ago, we got home 3D printers. And that's really the 10 years you're talking about, where anyone could then do it. And my background is electronics. I've done a lot of electronics. My day job's electronics. I've written 10 books on electronics, and the books were starting to die off. So I said, well, I'm going to do this YouTube stuff and show people, how to program and how to build electronics and kind of share my hobby and like everyone kind of does on YouTube. And the electronics it was difficult to teach, at least at that point. And everyone wanted to know about the 3D printer that I had, because the 3D printer I have for printing the boxes or brackets or whatever. And I was constantly fixing it because back then the printers just weren't that good. So I started showing people how I fixed it, and those videos just took off. And I'm like, okay, I'll just do 3D printing. It's fun, and then it just, I reached a point where it was about 4 years in, the channel was kind of flat. And there's a new printer that came out, a real low cost printer that everyone's interested in. I had one, and I started showing how to improve that thing. And that's when the channel just exploded, because I hit the right topic at the right time, and had the 4 years of experience prior, and then I just help people get started. And then it's the Ender. The Ender was the name of the printer. It's an Ender 3, and people started calling me the Ender Whisperer because I knew everything about it. And then from there, I just grew the social media, just being around people. And there's so many big YouTubers that I know personally, and you just get tips from everybody, and you go hang out at the same kind of meetups and stuff. And it just takes time, but it just grows on its own. It gets a life of its own, and then the subscribers and views and everything else comes. And so I've been doing this 10 years. 10 years I've been doing the 3D printing. I'm actually trying to get electronics back into it because the printers have now gotten really good. You don't need my help that much. So
well, Chuck, feel free to mention a legal curve on Filament Friday and maybe get us a few subscribers.
Sounds good.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate you telling us more about your son, more about yourself, and of course the international influence you wielded on the dad's trip. Chuck, thank you very much for joining us today on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chuck.
Appreciate it. There he goes. That's Chuck Hellebuck, of course, father of Connor Hellebuck, who is doing his thing probably tonight. Well, we know tonight.
He's starting tonight. I'm expecting it to be Hellebuck versus Demko.
Well, you would be expecting right because Rick Bowness confirmed yesterday that Connor Hellebuck would be starting. Well, he didn't confirm it 100%. He kind of he indicated to Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press that he was on the right track when he asked about Connor starting today. So no surprise, Saturday night is Connor Hellebuck's night. And so that should be a fun one for Jets fans. Jets, and you, of course, can join us because we'll be back in, I'd love to say 12 hours, but it's actually it's closer to 13 hours for the Illegal Curve post-game show. Of course, this has been the Illegal Curve hockey show. 2 hours of Jets talk, as we didn't even talk about the Moose. I'm not going to go do a Moose minute because we're already in overtime, but the Moose are playing the Milwaukee Admirals at 2:00. I'll be at the game. So it's going to be a busy one for me and for you, because even if you're not at the game, as you're
put on your antlers, it's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Okay, so that was fantastic because I was looking at your face and I was like, as he's about to do something, I'm not sure what he's about to do, but he's about to do something.
Dave. You started talking about the Moose. Big game this afternoon.
Big game.
Let's talk.
All right, we'll talk. We'll give the folks, still a lot of you with us. We're into what we call overtime, but I'll keep it rolling.
Mindell's not here. We can go an extra 5 minutes, no problem.
Well, you know what the reality was.
What do I have to do, Dave Parent?
Yeah, that's a fair point, Ez. We don't want you to do that. But look, the reality is the Moose quickly flipped the script after an 11-game losing streak, 0-10-1. The Moose flipped it when they went for 9 straight games on the road. They left January 26th from Manitoba and played 9 games on the road. They went 6-2-1. I see folks saying about Milic, Thomas Milic, the Jets 2023 fifth rounder. He was recalled. He played 6 of the games, went 4-1-1. The Moose made a big move. They sent Oskari Salminen to Norfolk of the ECHL, which means Colin Delia and Thomas Milic will be your tandem moving forward till, I guess, Oskari Salminen can maybe get his game back on track. But yeah, it's a big week for the Moose because, again, they've got 6 straight at home. We've already given away the tickets for today's Chaz Lucius bobblehead game, Ezzy, but should be a fun one. You've got the kids are all right. Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, both scoring big goals in that shootout win over the Calgary Wranglers on Wednesday to conclude things. I didn't get a chance to talk about it in the postgame. Oh, I did. No, I didn't get to because we ended just as the shootout was starting in overtime. So Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov were the 2 goal scorers, and Colin Delia made both saves so that he faced from Calgary. So the Moose won that game in the shootout. And like I said, they went 6-2-1. So again, we're listening to you, Phil Smith, and I'm not listening, but the Moose are obviously listening to you because they did keep Thomas Milic, and we don't know who's in net today. They do have the benefit, of course, of the NHL line: Toninato, Gustafsson, Axel Jonsson, Fieldy. They've got 5 lines right now, 5 really good lines, so they've got the ability to be fresh. But yeah, it's going to be a big game. The Moose, like I said, last 9 games, 6-2-1, but the Milwaukee Admirals have not lost in 2024, Ezzy.
Crazy.
They're 15-0-0
until today.
Well, possibly. I asked Mark Morrison about that, and he said one of the games that they played and they lost during this road trip was against Milwaukee, where he felt his team was in it for the most part. They know they can hang with them. They just got to make sure they play consistently for 60 minutes. So right now, especially with the additions they've got from the NHL, should make for a hell of a good game. And then superhero game on Monday, which is, I think, Louis Riel Day. So
and Dave, you're just going as Dave Minuk.
I'm going as Dave Minuk, I guess. And so I will be going as the
Super Dave.
We'll have that game covered. Yeah, Super Dave. We'll have game tickets for that game, but I'll probably give those away tonight. And of course, we should mention quickly, because the show's really into overtime, because I think I just saw Matt Hyman mention Colby Barlow, but the 2023 first rounder of the Jets, slow start, injury to start his campaign this season. He just reeled off, as 20 goals in 20 games for Owen Sound. So Jets fans are feeling good about him. He did get shut out last night, so it was 20 goals in 21 games. But if you want, go check out illegalcurve.com. We're going to have a highlight pack coming up in about an hour and 20 minutes of Colby Barlow's goals over that stretch. Well, actually, they had 18 of his 19, but that's that courtesy of the OHL. Okay, as it's been a long show, we've talked about the Moose, we've talked about the Jets, we've talked to Chuck Hellebuck. We talked to Teddy Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun. We've talked to all of you. We appreciate all of you spending your Saturday morning with us. And of course, a big thanks to all of the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the postgame show, the Saturday show, and the website Ezzy, illegalcurve.com, a possibility. They are in no particular order. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Grid Park. Use code illegalcurve to park for free. Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Farmery Beer. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Well, it's been a long one. It's been a good one. We've enjoyed every moment of it. And thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. We look forward to spending your Saturday evening and Sunday morning with us when we are back here on the Illegal Curve post-game show in, 12 and a half hours. So join Ezzy, join me, maybe join Drew. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Thank you very much. Smash that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Leave us feedback. Do it all. We appreciate it. Have a good rest of your afternoon, folks. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Illegal Curve